Hello guys. I feel like I just went there, did the work, got the degree and left. I think I did a week's unpaid work experience in that office, but you have a unique voice and you have a unique story. So many people make content, but no one makes it like you make it. Being happy in my singlehood. I'm like, this is a chapter, this is a season. And let me just enjoy this because I have so much freedom right now. It's not necessarily you need to cut someone off. People go through shit. Like, life is fucking hard. Yeah, you can read all the books and journal all you want in isolation, but if you're not engaging with the world, you're not going to get as deep of an understanding about yourself. I didn't really know how to be alone, I don't think. Just companionship is not enough. You need to be expanding me and I need to be expanding you. It needs to be mutual. You might just be in like a fucking low point, but there's going to be highs, and it's just like that belief and that faith that like there's going to be good times ahead. So I did a little question thingy on my Instagram and people asked me questions and I've written them down. I've actually got a lot of questions. I'm really excited. They're really good questions as well. And it was so exciting when people started asking questions, because in the past I've done these and it's just like crickets, like nobody's said anything. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll just make up my own questions then. But people have actually asked me things. So I'm excited about this. I'm kind of nervous as well. It's really just us. We're just chatting. Okay. But let's just take a moment. It is Sunday afternoon, which is nice. I've had a really chill day. I've just been like cleaning my room and just doing all the little things to make the week feel like as like calm as possible. I feel like if I start the week and I haven't like tied up the loose ends of the week before, it just feels like life becomes like a ball, like a snowball rolling down a hill, and things just like, and so I'm just like, okay, cleaned my room, made some food, got out the house, had the day off work, and I feel good. It's also raining today, which is perfect for this kind of vibe that we've got going on here. I want to start with the questions that I got around architecture, because I did get a few questions about my job and about my experience at uni and the jobs that I've had in the past and just like my journey with it all. I've also been finding a few more people on YouTube lately who also do architecture and also do content, and it's just nice to see that, I think, because I think that architecture can be a world that feels very all consuming. It just feels like this is what you do. You're an architect and it becomes your whole identity. Let me go back a little bit. So I started studying in 2018. I did my Bachelor of Architectural Studies, which is 3 years in Australia. But someone asked how was my experience at uni. I think that my experience at uni was, I always say to people that I don't really feel like I had like a uni experience. I didn't really have that many friends at uni. I had one close friend. We're not close anymore, but we were close when I was at uni, and had another friend, but I didn't really find my tribe in uni. I didn't find people that I really, really connected with and people I really shared the same values with. So I did feel like it was a bit of a, I don't want to say an isolating experience, but just, it wasn't like uni. I feel like sometimes uni, it's meant to be this experience that is like, you know, you have people and you go out and you do all this stuff. For me, it just wasn't really like that. When I was at uni, I was living in share houses with friends that I went to high school with. So I feel like we had that more togetherness at home, like rather than at uni. But still, I just didn't feel fully in love with it. I didn't feel fully like, wow, exciting, amazing. I feel like I just went there, did the work, got the degree and left, and didn't really think about it that deeply. Then after I graduated uni, so I graduated in 2020 during lockdown, which was so intense because I started working. So let me talk about my work experience. So I started working in second year at university, and the architecture world, I feel like with getting a job is so much about connections. At least that's my experience. And so I got my first job in uni through somebody I knew from growing up in Byron. The person that I work for now, actually, funnily enough, this is a bit of a long-winded story, but the person that I'm working for now, his dad was a teacher of mine in high school. And when I graduated, I was working this part-time job in this pharmacy. And so this architect's dad, he came in, my teacher, he came in and saw me and he was like, oh, Cameron, like, what's going on? What are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm having a gap year, but I'm going to go and study architecture next year. And he was like, oh, my son's an architect. You should go and chat to him. And then his son came into the pharmacy later that day and he was like, oh, my dad said you're studying architecture. You're going to study architecture. You should come by the studio. And then I went by the studio and like met with him. And then I went on my gap year, came back to Byron. And whenever I came back to Byron, I would always go and catch up with him. And I always just like kept that connection. And then when I was in second year at uni, I asked him if he knew anyone in Sydney, any architecture offices, because he also studied in Sydney. And then he gave me a list of offices and looped me in with an email with them. And then I had an interview at 2 of them. And then I got the job at one of those places. It was so funny. When I went for that job interview, I didn't have a portfolio. Like I had a portfolio, but I didn't have it with me. And I also didn't have like an iPad or a laptop or anything. I had this iPhone 5 that had like a fucked up, cracked screen. And I was at the meeting table and I was like, yeah, here's my portfolio. And I was like showing them my like dodgy portfolio on this cracked iPhone 5. I was just so naive. Apparently when I left, this is like what a colleague told me later on, when they walked back up the stairs, they were like, oh, she's cute. And I think they were just like so probably taken aback that I didn't have a portfolio or anything. And I was just so like, wow, like, hi. And then I think I did a week's unpaid work experience and that in that office, just like making models. And then I got the job, which was great. And I worked there for 2.5 years, I think. So I was doing 2 days a week whilst I was studying. And then I went up to 4 days a week after I graduated. And that was my first job out of uni and in uni. I feel like any job after uni, like your first job in architecture, is good because of the fact that you can build connections from there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somewhere you'll stay forever, but like somewhere you can stay for like a year or so and just gain experience and see how things work, see how projects are run, and then go from there. So then I left that office in 2022, and then I moved back here to Byron, which is where I went to high school. And then I started working for a different company. And I also got this job that I had in Byron through somebody who worked with me in the office in Sydney. So it was very much like connections. And then I worked there for like maybe a year and a half, left, went overseas and came back. And now I'm working for a different office, just doing 2 days a week. And that suits me really well at the moment because I don't want to work full-time in architecture. I really don't. That's another thing. Someone asked me, do I see myself working in architecture forever? Forever is a long time, and I don't have that sort of foresight to see the future. But my gut and my intuition tells me that right now it's not what I want to pursue. It's not. I don't feel alive and excited and that spark, that creative spark. I don't feel that with architecture. I kind of go on my computer and I just like type and click and do things in CAD. And I love like choosing materials and like designing furniture and designing interiors and stuff, but it doesn't light a fire inside of me. I just kind of feel like I just do it. And it is a great thing to do, and it's a great skill, and I can make money from it. But yeah, I don't feel super passionate about it. And I'm passionate about so many other things. And I think that passion and creativity is very, very important to me. I really value it. And so I would rather pursue something else at the moment, put more time and energy into other things that make me feel that excitement and that creativity. And I went through a really like doubting myself time with that feeling of like, oh my God, I don't feel passionate about architecture. What am I gonna do? This is what I studied. I'm a failure. And then telling myself that all the other things I want to do it's not real work. It's not real jobs and so much like doubt and lack of belief, and so many beliefs that I had that were just a part of like society and conditioning that weren't actually mine. And someone asked why I chose architecture. I chose architecture because when I was in high school, I really liked design. I loved this subject that I had called design and technology, and I designed and built a bed in my final year of high school. It was like this rocking bed, and the idea was that like you'd rock in it and then it would like put you to sleep slowly. And then I really loved it. I loved the whole process of like designing and documenting and making like a portfolio, and I thought it was really cool. So I was like, well, my career options from here are being an industrial designer, an interior designer, an architect, an interior architect, and I applied for all of these things. And I put architecture as my number one preference because I felt like architecture was a really good umbrella for all of the other things. Like, I think that you can study architecture and then sort of go into interior design from there, or you can study architecture and then pivot to industrial design with not as much restudying as it would take to do it the other way around, like to study industrial design and then go to architecture. I feel like let's go for the big beast first, and then we can work our way down from there if we want to. And yeah, I feel like that's all I have to say about architecture. What season of life am I in? I love this question. It's like one of my favorite questions to ask people. Like, what season, what era are you in right now? Because I think that we do go through these different seasons, and it's nice to reflect and be like, oh, I feel like this is more the space that I'm in right now. So for me right now, I feel like I'm in a work, discipline, just like hustle era. I'm just doing my thing bit by bit and just having my routine and keeping life quite together, trying to at least. Like, I feel like the past season I was in was a lot of moving parts and a lot of chaos in the best way possible, but just so much happening and so much uncertainty and just like lots of my brain needing to be like constantly making decisions and thinking. And now I just feel like, okay, things are kind of in place for now, so let's just sit with this for a couple months and work hard and save money and in this space as well, because everything is quite stable. Like, I'm living at home, I have a good job at the moment, or a couple of jobs, and I'm making money, I'm being looked after by my mom. Like, life is very good. I'm in a very, very good, privileged position, and I feel like I have a lot of space in my mind to be like consuming things like reading more, taking in more, learning more, listening to podcasts and reflecting more. So I feel like I'm in a really nice, stable work era. That's the season I'm in. Someone has asked how to handle lots of change inside and around me. I like this question because I love change. But I think that I haven't always loved change as much as I love change now, and I haven't always been as comfortable with change as I am now. In fact, I used to be quite uncomfortable with things changing, especially when things were good. Like, if I was having a good moment, I'd be like, well, I don't want this to change because everything's so good. I think that when you open yourself up to change, you're also opening yourself up to the possibility of things not being as good, but you're also opening yourself up to the possibility of things being better. So I would say how to handle lots of change. Look at your attitude towards change. Do you think that change is an inherently bad thing, a scary thing? Like, what are your beliefs and your attitudes around change itself? And why? Why do you think that? Be curious about it and ask yourself that question. One thing that is for sure in this life is that things are going to change. So we need to be able to move with change and to not necessarily not be affected by it, but just to be malleable and like not be rigid with things, because I think that when we're rigid and we think things can't change, things are gonna change. Like, it's inevitable. And so if you're resistant to change, you're gonna suffer, you're gonna hurt. And I think that when you open yourself up to change and you start to accept it, just like in little moments in your life, open yourself up to change. It's not like you have to have one dramatic moment that's like you moving across the world or like something drastic to change. You can start to become comfortable with change in very small moments in your life. and then it's like growing from there. I think that it's kind of like a muscle that we can get that gets stronger. Like, for example, last year for my birthday, I took myself camping. I went camping for one night by myself, and then I went camping for one night with someone that I was seeing at the time. They came to the campsite and camped with me, and I got really, really anxious that night. We were doing shrooms, but then I got really anxious that evening because I felt like I didn't want things to change. I was like, this is such a nice moment, and I was getting really anxious because the moment was going to be over the next day. Like, I couldn't hold on to it, and it was making me really anxious, the fact that I couldn't hold on to the moment, which sounds so silly because, like, of course you can't, but I was getting really anxious about it. And it was really something that, not just in that instance, but I think in many times in my life, I've been like, oh my God, I don't want to let go of this. Yeah, I don't know, like, you just have to, it's inevitable, and it's painful, but I think that it's just about getting more comfortable with it and accepting it more. Find little ways to ease into it and to just massage it a little bit, you know? How to not let other people's opinions affect your decisions. This is a good one. It's hard, especially if it's like someone you're really close to, maybe your parents or friends. I think specifically parents. How to not let other people's opinions affect your decisions. Well, I think that you have to be very, very clear in what it is that you want and what your values are. If you're not strong in your own values and your own beliefs, then I think it's so much easier to get swayed by other people's opinions because you don't have that like ground to stand on. So I would say, get to know yourself, get to know your values, get to know your own opinions and your own beliefs, because when you're strong in that, it's so much harder to be swayed. And I think you get to know yourself through just experience and opening yourself up. I think that's 100%. It's so funny having this conversation as in me speaking to the camera, because I low-key want someone to I want the two-way conversation. Anyway, yeah, I think that we 100% find ourselves and get to know ourselves through connection and experience with other people. Yeah, you can read all the books and journal all you want in isolation, but if you're not engaging with the world, I think that you're not going to get as deep of an understanding about yourself. I think that most of the aha moments and the revelations I've had about myself have been through being with somebody else, whether that's friends or dating people or being around my family and seeing how I am and how I exist in that space and what I think and what things that come up, the uncomfortable feelings. And it's we really get to know ourselves through connection. It's like that saying or whatever it is, how everyone is a reflection of you, and that's why you can learn so much of yourself through connection, because people reflect back to you parts of yourself. Sometimes parts of yourself that you didn't know were there, or parts of yourself you've been trying to ignore or hide. When you're with somebody, if they bring up something in you, you can't deny it. You can't deny that feeling within you. So definitely. But I think I went on a tangent. I'm really enjoying this, by the way. Don't you sometimes think you don't have enough time? What a great question. Thinking that we don't have enough time is a scam. It's an illusion, and it's not the truth. Sorry, my battery ran out, but I'm back. Where was I? Time, not having enough time. Yeah, it's a trick into making us feel like things are scarce. We get so busy with our lives and start thinking about all these things that we want to do, and it's I need to do this by a certain age, and I need to do this by then, and all these things I need to check, and people I need to please, and is there enough time to do, especially with even in day-to-day life, I can feel there's not enough time, not necessarily with reaching goals and getting to things in the future, but just in my day-to-day weeks, in terms of getting work done, staying active, going to the gym, and then being close with my family, and then having friends, and then working on my creative things, and having time to be present with myself and meditate and reflect, and all of these things. There's so many things just in day-to-day life to keep up with, and I can definitely feel there's not enough time. But then I have to remember that it's not everything all the time. Like, maybe some weeks I'm not so social and I focus more on creative projects. Maybe some weeks are not for creative projects and I'm doing more of my actual work. And, you know, I think that's where balance comes in. There's like different pedals that we can press, and it's okay to stop something and pull back and start something else, and we don't have to do everything all the time. That's a huge thing that I've come to accept. Like, it's okay not to do it all. It's really okay. We're not meant to do it all. But I think that in general, I don't feel like time is that scarce. I think that, like, in terms of things that I want to achieve in the future and like places I want to go, people I want to see, books I want to read, even, like, there's so much to take in. But there's so much time, guys. We have so much time. And I feel very, very young. I'm 25. But I like to ask people this question, like, do you feel young or do you feel old? Because I think the age can be like an inwards thing, like how we feel. And I feel like I have a lot of time ahead of me. Like, I don't know. I'm just like, there's so much time for all these things. Like, the living alone, the going overseas, the having kids, the having a partner, all of it, all the friends. There's so much time to build all of this stuff. So yes and no to that question. What are my 3 favorite memories? And I have had a little brainstorm because it's a hard question to think of on the spot, right? And I could only think of 2, like, and things that really came to my mind straight away. One thing that came to my mind straight away was when I was in London last year and I was seeing somebody for a little bit. And there was this morning where I had stayed at his house, and then in the morning we went for a run, and it started raining while we were running. I'm wearing his shorts and my long sleeve top. We went for a run, and then it started raining, and we were like stuck in the rain and running, but it was so much fun. And it was a bit cold. It wasn't freezing, but it wasn't warm either. And it was just so lighthearted and fun, carefree. I love those moments. I felt like a kid. And like to share that moment with him as well. It was really, really beautiful. And then we like stopped and like had a kiss in the rain, and then we went to the bakery and got some snacks, and then went home, and that was just a really, really beautiful moment, you know. That's a really nice memory that I have. And then another memory I have, which just came to my mind, was when I was in Sweden last year, and I had a little solo getaway to like the countryside in Sweden. I went kayaking one day down this river, and it was so beautiful. Like, I felt like I was the only person existing. It was stunning. I was kayaking down this river, and like in moments the sun would reflect right off the water, and I had my speaker, that's all right, and I was playing, I don't remember what song I was playing. I was playing I Couldn't Love You More by Sade. I couldn't love you more, oh, right now, baby, that song. And I was just vibing. I remember it just being like so idyllic. So that was a really nice moment. And then a third favorite memory, trying to think of something like childhood. I remember I always used to go to my nan's house with my brother. This is when I lived in London, when I was like 4 or 5, and we'd watch Chicken Run on the TV, and we'd get frozen pizzas from Iceland, and we'd cook them in the oven at my nan's, and then we'd sit down together and eat our pizzas off these trays. I remember the tray that I used to use. It was like a tray, and it had all of these different like tropical West Indian fruits on it, and I'd eat my pizza off that tray and watch Chicken Run with my brother, and it was a really nice time. What the biggest challenge I've had to face is, I do like this question. I think the biggest challenge I've had to face that I can think of is probably leaving my ex. So I was with somebody we were probably together for like 2.5 years, and I knew that the relationship was not serving me. Like, I felt like I was putting so much in that relationship and was not getting anything out other than companionship, which to me, especially in retrospect, just companionship is not enough to be with somebody, just to have somebody there. Like, no, you need to be adding to me, you need to be expanding me, and I need to be expanding you. It needs to be mutual. But it felt like it was just a one-sided thing. But I was very like, I think I needed somebody. Like, I didn't really know how to be alone, I don't think. Or I think I did. Like, my adolescence was I loved spending time alone, But I think that being a young adult, I felt like I needed somebody. But I found it really, really hard to leave that relationship. And I think that was maybe one of the biggest challenges I've had to face, because if I didn't leave that relationship, I think that, like, how do I say, like, leaving that relationship was like a catalyst for me getting to know myself and learning to love myself, learning to love my own company, going on solo trips, like finding myself truly. But I also think that was a very necessary chapter in my life to be in that relationship. And I've learned so many lessons about myself from the way that I was in that relationship, which is a whole thing in itself. But yeah, I think biggest challenge, leaving my ex. How has my relationship with my body and my health evolved? I was thinking this just the other day. I was at the gym and I was thinking to myself, I think that this is the most balanced my relationship with like working out and exercise and eating has ever been. I don't think that my relationship with my body and my health has ever been that unhealthy, but I think that the unhealthiest it has been was when I was with my ex, and he was really into it all sounds so fucking cringe now that I'm actually saying it. I really feel like I just closed the chapter on that part of my life, and like I haven't really revisited it that much. But he was really into like the BBL body kind of, and like would save heaps of photos and stuff on Instagram, and it made me really insecure because I don't have that body. Like it's just not the way I'm built. And then I felt like to be desirable I had to have that kind of body, so I would like always work out my glutes in the gym, and like felt like I had to get gains or whatever, and like a bit of a slippery slope, to be honest. So many lessons in that. But yeah, it has evolved a lot, and now I exercise for the feeling rather than the aesthetics. Like first and foremost, I work out because of how I want to feel rather than how I'm going to look as a result of it. Took me a long time to arrive at. I feel like I always worked out for the image, not for the feeling, which would lead me to more look at like the metrics of it, like how many days a week am I going, how often am I going, how long am I working out for. Whereas now it's like, do I feel like going to the gym, do I feel like going for a run, do I feel like doing yoga, do I feel like going for a walk, like what's going to make me feel good rather than what's going to make me look good. So it's definitely evolved. Anyway, let's continue. Finding your tribe and people with shared values. Great question. This is something that I would have asked somebody like a couple of years ago, because I felt like I really lacked that in my life. I just felt like nobody was on the same page, and like really, you know, you meet people and it's just like, oh, you get it, like you resonate. It's probably how you guys feel watching my videos. Like that feeling when you have that in person with somebody. Oof, chef's kiss, such a good feeling. But in terms of how to actually find it, you have to be yourself, and you have to be like, what are you looking for? What are you trying to attract? Embody that, live as that, show up as that, because people will see that in you and see themselves in you, and hence be attracted to that. But as cringe as it is, guys, your vibe attracts your tribe through and through, tried and tested. But in saying that, your vibe can also attract the wrong tribe, which is kind of what someone else has asked a question on. They've said, how to handle avoiding a friend that brings down your mood or drains your energy. And I think that sometimes when you have a light and your vibe might be really high, you can sometimes attract people that want some of that but aren't necessarily on that wavelength, if that makes sense. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this, and I don't think that we need to look to cut off people who don't match our energy. I think that's a very, very nuanced question, and it very much depends on the relationship, the friendship, whatever it is. Because I do think that sometimes someone might not be on the same vibe as you. It doesn't mean that they're not adding anything to your life and you're not adding anything to theirs. And I think that there's still there's still love that you can give and love that you can get from relationships that are energetically mismatched in a way. But then again, there's also times when it's just like, it's not serving you at all, and you're not getting any evolution or expansion or love from that. And so then it's time to cut the cords. And in terms of dealing with that, I think that it's nice to have a conversation rather than just being like, you know what, let me just ghost this person. I think it's nice to have a conversation. But I also think that you need to discern based on the person whether or not they can have that conversation, because sometimes I think that people wouldn't be able to have that conversation and would take it all very, very personally, which it is and it isn't. You know, like cutting someone off, yeah, it is personal, but also if that person can have understanding and compassion for you, then I think that you should be able to have a conversation that has some level of like equanimity, like fair enough, like okay, I see where you're coming from. But it's so hard. I would say always try and have a conversation and see how they deal with it and see what comes from there. It might be like you might have assumed all these things about this person, and they might not be comfortable to communicate certain things with you, or they might be going through something that's really difficult. That's why I say that it's like, it's not necessarily you need to cut someone off. People go through shit, like life is fucking hard. But I also understand sometimes it's just like too much, and in that instance I would say try and have a conversation. If they can't take it, then say la vie, you've done your best. All you can do is do your best. It's difficult trying to figure out how much to extend yourself and like overextend yourself for somebody. I guess it just needs to be reciprocated in some way. And it might not also be reciprocated in the same way. You know, the way that we give love is not always the way that we receive love from other people. Like everyone gives love differently. As difficult as it is, and as scary and vulnerable as it is in those times, like cutting somebody off, I think that there should typically be a conversation. Learning to have confidence and self-love to do things alone. I think that you can cultivate that confidence and self-love to do things alone through doing things alone. So start with something small. If you're afraid of doing things alone, as I was, like going out for a drink by myself used to be like, oh my God, what are you doing? Everyone's going to think you're weird. Everyone's going to think you're a loner. And what the fuck are you doing? Whereas now I'm like, I am going out for a drink by myself, and I will take my journal, take my book. It's not a big deal anymore. But it was a big deal for me, and I got over it, and I built more confidence and more self-love through doing small things alone, going out for coffee alone, going for dinner alone, going on trips alone, camping alone. But I also did these things because I didn't have anyone else to do them with at the time. Like I was forced to do it. If I wanted to have fun and enjoy myself, then I had to do it alone, because I didn't really have any friends at this time of my life, when I was just newly single and still wanted to enjoy my life. So I was kind of forced to, and I'm so glad I did, because I think that it's given me a lot of self-love and confidence. So yeah, I think that you get that self-love and confidence through the experience and through the doing. It's not like you build it all up and then you go out into the world. Like we learn and we gain everything, wisdom, knowledge, love, all of it. We gain it through doing and through life. We have to just involve ourselves and reflect on those experiences, and the self-love and the confidence will come. Oh, I like this one. Advice on feeling connected to the beauty of life again. Well, think about moments. When do you usually see the beauty in life? If you're going through a moment or a time at the moment where you're finding it more difficult to see that beauty, think about memories and times in the past where you have felt that. Has it been times when you've been having conversations with friends? Has it been times where you've been out in nature? Has it been when you're doing a certain activity, when you're doing something creative, when you're reading, when you're writing, when you're watching something? Like, when do you, to yourself in the past, when have you felt connected to the beauty of life? And I think be intentional about realizing that, oh, that thing made me feel connected to the beauty of life at a time in the past, whether it was in your childhood, last month, last week, whenever it was. Bring that into the present. Let's say as a child, oh, I loved going to the movies. Maybe go to the movies. Or maybe you loved building sandcastles at the beach. If you live by the beach, go and build sandcastles at the beach. I think nostalgia has a big part to play in what I'm trying to say. Like, I think that when we engage in those activities and those things that are connected to nostalgia and with a joyous memory, I think that it can bring that into the present, if that makes sense. I feel like that was a bit convoluted, but do things that bring you joy, but also feel a little nostalgic, because there's such a rich feeling in nostalgia that just really pulls on the heartstrings. A great question is how to differentiate between listening to your gut and anxiety. I feel like this is such a difficult question, and I don't have all the answers. Like, sometimes I do feel this like resistance and this inner like, resistance is a good word. And it's like, is this something I need to push through and learn from? Is there a lesson in this? Or is this my body telling me like, oh, no, like this isn't right? It's really hard to discern between the two. I don't know, it's a very personal thing. Like, sometimes I think that when it feels like fear, I don't know, I think there's a different sort of fear that you can feel sometimes. Like, oh, this is fear that you need to like lean into. Like, there's something good that can come from this. It's almost like it's like fear, but with excitement. I think that anxiety can feel like, you can have an upwards feeling, but it can also have like a heavy, dark doom feeling, I would say. I think that's the anxiety. I'm like, no, it's not right, turn around. But the anxiety where I'm like, it feels hopeful, possible, that kind of anxiety, I'm like, oh, there's something here. I think it's a feeling thing, it's an intuition thing, which is not something that makes logical sense, so it's hard to explain. Next question. What feeds my creative soul? Love this. Nature, for sure. A joint. Experience, like being amongst things, whether I'm having good conversations with people, and maybe I'm reading books, maybe I'm watching like interviews on YouTube, but I'm immersing myself in something. I'm like sourcing inspiration from somewhere, and then safe, comfy, cozy space to explore all of that and to unpack and put things together and process and integrate. That feeds my creative soul, for sure. And some ambient lighting, if we really want to get specific, maybe a cup of tea, some music, definitely. And we're on track for a really good creative session. How to be happy in singlehood / deal with relationship anxiety. I'm very happily single at the moment. And I think that the reason I'm so happily single at the moment is because I'm very content in myself, and like I have just like, my life is very full. I feel like my life is very rich, very full of different things, and it doesn't really feel like I'm lacking heaps until I'm like lying in bed one morning and I want cuddles and I'm like, why? And I get the longing. And I think that a big thing with being happy, being single, is being hopeful and leaning into the abundance. Like, so many people I'm going to meet, like experiences that I've had in the past with men, and these beautiful memories that I have in my mind, they really keep me company. And all these beautiful times I've had in the past, there's so much potential for me to have times that are just as beautiful or more beautiful in the future. Like I said before, there's so much time, and I think that's how I feel when I think about relationships and being happy in my singlehood. I'm like, this is a chapter, this is a season, and let me just enjoy this, because I have so much freedom right now. I have so much time for myself, and it's wonderful. And I also have so much love to give, and I have friends at the moment who I can pour that love into, and my family, I'm like giving them more love at the moment. So I have a lot of places, and my creativity is another place where I can put my love. So I have a lot of outputs for my love at the moment, and I don't feel like I'm needing somebody. It all goes in waves as well. Like, sometimes I long for somebody more and I'm less content in my singlehood. How do I stay grounded? I don't think that I'm grounded all the time, and I don't think that there's a need to be grounded all the time. Although I do think there are certain things that I do that keep me in a space of like, I guess groundedness. But what am I trying to say? I mean, like, I don't have things together all the time, but I guess even when I don't have things together, I think I just have little anchors that anchor me to myself. And a big one is music. Music helps me stay so grounded, because with music comes singing, comes dancing, comes like affirmations through lyrics, through music that I listen to. So music is very, very grounding to me, because when you sing, you're like in the body. When you dance, you're in the body. It brings you into like the present, and I love that about music. And it's a huge anchor to me. Like, I need to take my portable speaker with me wherever I go traveling, my headphones, wherever I go traveling. Music is so grounding to me. Also, my journal. Like, I journal so much, and that's a huge thing that keeps me grounded. although when I go through like bad times, dark times, which doesn't happen that often, but it happened when I left London last. Things were happening with my nan, and my living situation was upside down and just chaos. It was lots of chaos, and I was really low, and it was really cold, and I was sick, and everything was just, nothing was going well, and I found it really hard to stay grounded in that time. And I think that when you get in such a emotional state of disarray, and like your physical space is in disarray as well, for me, I found it really hard to stay grounded in that time. And even little things like my journal, even she didn't help that much. Like, I didn't even feel like journaling. I didn't feel like listening to music. I didn't feel like reading. I didn't feel like doing these things that made me happy. So in times like that, it's really hard to stay grounded. I think that in times like that, it's just understanding that the waves, the ebbs and the flows, and you might just be in like a fucking low point, but there's going to be highs. And it's just like that belief and that faith that like there's going to be good times ahead. And we need to have that belief and that hope within us, because there are always good times ahead. And just remembering, like having a full view of your life and viewing all of the hills and valleys that you've like traversed, and being like, okay, I've been through that and I've gotten to higher highs. Like, there's always going to be the lows and the highs. But yeah, staying grounded, I guess. I hope that answered that question. And then I've got a few questions on content creation, how to make the process easier, any tips to film and edit, and do I get anxiety posting so much of my life online, how to overcome it. Tips for filming and editing and like content creation in general, how to make the process easier. With time, everything with time, I feel like the process gets easier as you get better at it, as you learn, as you find your style, which like all evolves through doing and through making and creating, and you'll find your groove. And it's just like, that's the exciting thing about content creation, is that there are no one's telling you what to do. You can do what you want to do. You can express yourself. You can say what you want to say. It's so freeing. It's so wonderful. And you can give. You can be of service with content creation as well. You can be like a voice for somebody else. You can highlight somebody else's thoughts. You can be comfort for somebody. You can be somebody's safe space. Like, you can do all of these things through creating, which is, I find, the most rewarding thing about content creation, is that like being of service in a way. And then tips to film and edit: get a tripod, and you can use your phone. The phones are great. Phones are so good. I have an iPhone 12 Pro, and I love the videos I take on my iPhone. I think they're really good. I film on my Canon G7X Mark II, which is really good. I mean, that's what I'm filming on now. I think that more important than the visuals is the story and storytelling. And that's like a skill that you can build. And then finding different ways to get creative with it, you know. Also getting inspiration from other creators, but then it's like you can pull all these bits of inspiration from other people and other places. But then even like movies and music videos, there's so much inspiration out there for video, but then pulling it all into your own world and your own voice. I think that's what creation is. Like, nothing is that original, really. Like, everyone's inspired by other things, and we pull all these things from different sources. Same with like music and every form of creation. We're always inspired by something outside of ourselves, but then we bring it into ourselves and we like output it back into the world, but it's like gone through us. And so it's like been transformed through our voice. And each one of us has a unique voice. Yeah, YouTube is super saturated. Every fucking creative platform is super saturated. Podcasts, saturated. Music, saturated. There's so much of everything. But you have a unique voice and you have a unique story. And so there's no you. Yeah, so many people make content, but no one makes it like you make it. And so believe in that. And do I get anxious posting so much of my life online? I used to get a lot more anxious about it. I think I didn't share as much as I do now, and now I don't get as anxious about it, even though I think that I share more. And that's interesting. And I think that has to do with just getting more comfortable with myself and sure of myself. Because I think if I was to make a video like this, say like 2 years ago or like a year ago, I would have unpacked and like picked apart so much of myself in like the editing process and like second guessing that I was saying and being like, people are going to get offended by that, or like you shouldn't say that, or like don't do that, so many like voices in my head. Whereas now I'm just like, I feel a lot more at peace with like my voice and what I have to say. I feel more strong in myself, and so I think that has helped a lot with the anxiety with posting. And also it's so unserious in terms of like Instagram posting and stuff. YouTube is also, everything's unserious. It's all unserious to a degree, but I think that helps with the anxiety with posting as well. I'm picturing like Instagram stories right now. Instagram in general, it just feels like a fucking weird place. Instagram's weird. Like everyone's gonna have a different perception of you online. Like the whole perception thing is, there's so many, you can get fucking lost in a tunnel of overthinking about perception, and I always do. But like everyone's gonna perceive you differently. The way that you perceive yourself is even like just one fragment of you know. And also with posting, sometimes I would find myself perceiving myself by what I thought other people would perceive me as. It's a perception inception. And that would really fuck with my head. And I feel like I just had to let go of it a lot and just really understand that I have no control over how people perceive me. Like we put things out on the internet and they're no longer like ours. Like especially with like creative things that we create, everyone takes on its own life. Like everyone sees it differently. Everyone sees things through their own lenses, and that's great. Like that's such an exciting thing about creation. Like I think about the songs that I listen to and how I will like take that song and those lyrics and like make it fit into like my world and be like, oh yes, this means this, and da 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 da. People do the same with content. It's like you become a part of somebody else's world. Your creations then get fit into the way that they perceive things, and that's fine. Like that's exciting. So I think that trying not to get caught up too much in the perception thing and just allowing it. You just have to accept it. If you're going to put things online, people are going to not always see it as you saw it. And that's just what it is. Someone said how to focus on yourself and have no distraction. I don't think that we can do that. I think we're always going to have distractions in life. And I think it's very idealistic to think that we can work on ourselves and focus on ourselves with no distractions, because the distractions help us. Like I was saying before, with, you know, these experiences and connections with people and just being involved in things, how that can help feed into your own personal growth. I mean, it depends what kind of distractions you're talking about. Like there's different sorts of distractions. I think that some distractions can be really beneficial in assisting you in actually focusing on yourself and giving you things to work with and like things to unpack through your own lens. And then I guess sometimes there are distractions that are detrimental to working on yourself and focusing on yourself, like social media sometimes, and things that we can become kind of like addicted to. I think those things can be detrimental to focusing on yourself, because I think to focus on yourself you need a level of discipline. And if you're getting addicted to things like social media, alcohol, caffeine, all these other things that we can get addicted to, then it becomes harder to actually focus on yourself. But also, even in having distractions and seeing how you respond to things, you can even learn about yourself through that. Like we can learn about ourselves through so many different things. We just have to think in a different way. There's like this, I think in the Ram Dass book, Be Here Now, there's a page and it's like, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's kind of saying how everyone and everything can be your guru if you let it be. I might have an interaction with somebody that might piss me off, and I might think to myself, oh, I didn't want that. I just shouldn't have had that interaction. Like that didn't give me anything. But if I look at it differently, I could have think, oh, why did I react like that? What can that teach me about myself? So there's always ways that we can look at things that actually do give us a deeper understanding of ourselves in like so many different instances. So that's an interesting question. I think there's always going to be distractions to some degree, and we just have to learn how to learn from the distractions to help us focus on ourselves. Okay, last question I'm going to answer is about books. Books you've read that have helped shape your perspective on life. So many books. My favorites? I'm like looking at all my book snacks around my room. Okay, when I read Out of Your Mind by Alan Watts in 2022, and I feel like it was the first like spiritual book that I read, and I feel like it really opened up my mind a lot. I mean, it's called Out of Your Mind, and I feel like every time I read it, I was like, wow, the title makes so much sense, because I'm out of my mind and I'm thinking about things so much bigger than me, and it just opened me up to like life, like how everything is so connected. And it was like it was opening me up to things that I intuitively knew, but bringing them into my mind and like making me actually understand them. So that book was really good. And then I also read I love Alif Shafak, the author, and I read her book The Island of Missing Trees. It's a fiction book. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Also The 40 Rules of Love by her. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Both of them are fiction books, but I feel like we can learn so much from fiction. There's so much truth in fiction. I just remember reading both of them and feeling like changed afterwards. And then one that I'm still reading at the moment, is Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. I'm like almost finished it and I have been loving it. I've been reading it for the past 2 months, and it's one of those books I'm just savoring every like bit of it. I'm not a very fast reader, and I'm really learning to love that about myself. Like, I love taking my time with a book and like really going through it, really understanding it. And there's no race to finish a book, like take your time. But anyway, I've been reading this book for 2 months and it's amazing. I would absolutely recommend. It's changed the way that I look at a lot of things and opened me up to a lot of things, and so I would recommend it. Those are my top book recommendations for now, I think. Also, Be Here Now by Ram Dass is really good as well. Also Maya Angelou's autobiographies, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and then I also read her next one, Gather Together in My Name. She has I think 4 more that I have to read, but I love them all. Okay, I also haven't read this book yet, but I'm going to say it anyway because I've listened to so many like podcasts and reviews and so much about it. How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. I haven't read it yet, but I know it's going to be amazing. So I'd also recommend. That's me, and those are the questions, and thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being here, and I should do this more often. I really like just sitting and chatting, although I wish we could engage in more actual conversation. This is, I guess, as close as we're gonna get, so please comment anything so that we can prolong this conversation and actually engage with each other. And yeah, I love you, and I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye.